Hello there, and welcome to the podcast. I am so glad you're here, so grateful you're here and spending time with me in this special series about how I'm learning about myself and how I can apply it in my business, and you can do the same thing. And today I have a super special guest. She has been on the podcast before. She is a great friend of mine, and we are talking all about cycle syncing today. So I'm thrilled. Laura, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so excited to be back, Amanda. Thanks for having me.
I am thrilled. So, before we jump into all the cycle syncing stuff, can you just remind everyone, maybe they didn't hear the other podcast, that we talked about time management? Can you tell everyone a little bit about you and maybe how you stepped into the cycle syncing so it's a little bit different from that first episode we did?
Yeah, and they're actually the story is connected, which is really it's kind of the same beginning point, which is really interesting. But I'm Laura. I'm a time management strategist, and I specifically work with women who work full-time and have a side business, and they're really looking to ditch that hot mess and level up their work-life balance. And I absolutely love what I do. But where I got started was just over 7 years ago. My husband and I were told that the only way that we could have kids was through IVF. And that was the starting point for my time management journey, but it's also the starting point for my cycle syncing journey, which is really interesting.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so it's the same starting point. And during that conversation with our fertility specialist, he basically looked at me and said, "Are you ready for a second full-time job?" And I was very nervous because if anybody has been through infertility there are a ton of doctor's appointments. You may or may not have surgeries or different procedures. You have very time sensitive shots and medications for months at a time. So it is just a very regimented type of lifestyle that you have to be willing to live. And so when we found that out, I decided to dig into the science and the research of time management. And when I did that, I found that all of the studies, all of the data, all of the research of how to manage your time really effectively was done by and for men. And it did not take into account the uniqueness that we as women, especially as working moms, have and the experience that we have. And so I took that science and I started to tweak and edit it and apply it to my life and to friends and families' lives. And I developed my own signature method in Time Management Academy, but it's still rooted in science.
I love that. And it's so fantastic how these stories really do connect.
They do.
And so it's really neat to me to think about how much it really is connected in how you teach others about time management, specifically women who often, not every woman has a cycle. I realize there are different stages of life and how things can be different, but most women do have a cycle, and then how that plays into when we can be productive, when we can be creative. And I've had the honor and the pleasure of working with several clients who have used this. Now, I didn't teach it clearly because I don't know. I'm learning here. This is my 101 today. I haven't taught this, nor will I, but the clients who have come to me and have known, okay, Amanda, this is when I feel more creative, this is when I feel more productive. It is unreal how much different it is. And that really opened my eyes. And this was several years ago when I had the first client that did it. And I was like, I want to do this. But specifically for me, I was not experiencing a period for quite a long time because I had an IUD and that it just removed, like it does that for some people. You don't really have a period. And so everything was kind of off. I mean, while that was a nice experience of not having to deal with it, I couldn't really tell you where I was in my cycle at any given time. And so I couldn't do the tracking, but I always thought, okay, if I make a change with whatever I use for birth control, I want to really dig into this. And fast forward to today, I have made a change and now I'm starting to track things. So I'm at the very beginning of this, hence the reason we're talking here on the podcast. So I'm asking all the 101 questions for everyone who's just curious about cycle syncing. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious, really, obviously, we know how you got started in terms of like what prompted it for you. But what were those first few steps that when you were learning about not just time management, but like the different like phases in the cycle and how that impacted you? What did you like start with?
So the first thing that I started with is anger, honestly. Like let's go through the 12 phases of grief or
Okay.
whatever it is, right? I was actually really angry that we were never truly taught how our bodies work.
Mm,
We were taught to just not have sex, right? And
right.
I don't want to turn it into like a sex ed conversation, but nobody in school ever teaches women the intricacies of how our body functions. No one. Nobody talks about it. You don't understand it. You just know that you have a period once a month or
Right.
once every 45 days or whatever. During the our IVF journey, I had to have a procedure done because they thought that my fallopian tubes were blocked. Turns out they weren't blocked when they got in there, but at the same time, they were able to diagnose me with stage 3 endometriosis. And so that was really where I said, okay, I need to understand each phase of my cycle so that I can understand what's happening. Because there was a point where with my cycle, I was debilitated for like 10 days, where I
Mm,
was in a ton of pain. I could not fully function emotionally. It wasn't a fun experience to have that type of endometriosis. So along that same journey, I started to say, how can I heal my endometriosis? And that was also a big catalyst for digging into each phase. But really, the IVF was like the true foundation because in IVF, you have to do things at very specific times of your cycle. So the doctor works with you to start tracking your cycle, and your cycle begins day one is the day that you start bleeding on your period. That's actually day one. And so they start tracking your cycle. So you have to come off of birth control for 1 to 3 months. They have to be able to track your cycle. And then you're able to do certain medications at certain points along the way of your cycle. So you start to learn the day that you ovulate, which I never even
right.
thought about or worried about before. I didn't know. And then it's really interesting because over the months and the years, as you become more in tune with your cycle, you can say, "Oh, this is why this is happening right now," or like, "Oh, I'm not crazy. I don't need to burn my business to the ground. I'm just
Right.
about to start my period."
Right. There's so many times we're laughing because of the realness. Like I'm thinking of all the clients I've worked with that would be like just in tears during a coaching call. And I'm like, it's going to be okay. And I didn't know to ask these questions, but they would come back the next week because we have weekly calls and they'd say, well, I started my period. So I'm okay today, but I'm sorry about last week, which no one needs to apologize for that. But it's interesting because you said that of like, literally hearing, I just read it in an we're connected through Holly, and Holly actually mentioned something of like, I just wanted to burn my business down or change the color or something. She didn't say anything about her period. I don't want to put her on blast here, but the idea of like, it made me think pretty quickly, like, oh, I wonder because of how much emotion goes into like, nothing is working, and like our brains will like take over because of the emotion.
Well, and one thing that's really interesting, not tied into business, but there is this joke or like this meme that goes around Instagram that I see occasionally that's like, I thought I hated my husband, but really I was just about to start my period. And here's the really cool thing. So I dug into that, right? Because I'm
Mm,
always like, where did that come from?
right.
So it's actually biological, where if the male in your life does not get you pregnant, you then want to go find someone who will get you pregnant. So that is why you
My
legitimately
gosh.
do not like your husband as you're about to start your period because your body knows that it didn't get pregnant. And it's just these like primal, primitive things. And so when that happens, and I tie that back to business, and I'm like, my whole existence, my whole being, when I'm about to start my period, wants to get rid of everything and shed everything in my life because I didn't get pregnant. So my primal body is like, we need to go start over somewhere else and find something that will get you pregnant. And I just like kind of tie that back to business. It's not a one-to-one analogy, but it's
Sure.
still insightful to understand where I call it the lizard brain, like your primal brain, where that part of your brain is during that phase of the month.
Oh, that's so fascinating. And
Isn't it?
I'm going, yeah, this is really fascinating for me. And it's really an aha moment because this is something that I've never really talked about on the podcast, but I'm never shy about talking about it. I have never really had the desire to have children. Now, I have two wonderful stepkids that they're great and I love them. But I have, and they know this too. Like, I've just never had the desire to, get pregnant and birth a child and raise a child. You're like, that just wasn't part of my plan. And so it's interesting for me that even though that desire is not in my heart, and thankfully people are coming around to the idea that that's not me being crazy. Like,
Yeah.
thankfully, there's more people talking about it, and I don't get the responses like I used to. But my body doesn't necessarily know my heart's desire or whatever. It's my body is like, shut it all, get it started over. We
Yeah.
got to do this thing. And I've never had that thought before because I just think about what, like, oh, I don't want to get pregnant. Like, I've never wanted to. So, but my biological body is like, yeah, that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Like that's why we're here. We're here so
Right.
that we can get pregnant.
Which is really interesting. So I just want everyone to know, like, if you're out there and you're not wanting to get pregnant, like, our bodies may still feel that way, but you don't have to
Yeah.
feel that way in your heart. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. There was a long period of time where I didn't want to really have kids either. And
Mm-hmm.
I very much questioned it. And even now, there was a phase where I thought maybe I'll have two or three kids. And now I'm like, nope, we're one. One. We're
We're
done.
one. Yeah, and I think everyone has that right to have that choice and decide
Yeah.
and what's best for you. But as a female that is experiencing a cycle, coming back to that of like, we need to do the best we can to your point, and I totally agree with you. I did not learn any of this in school, and it is baffling to me why we did not learn that. I remember distinctly the day they taught us about periods in like fifth grade. I think it was fifth, maybe it was fourth. It was elementary school for me for sure, which is kindergarten through fifth in Florida.
Yeah.
And so when I remember sitting there, they removed all the boys from the room
Yeah.
and just taught the girls. And basically, they just put some pads and tampons on the table, on the
Yep.
desk, and like told us about this. And like everyone's confused. And you don't even know what questions to ask. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like there could have been a way. Maybe it's different today. I don't know.
I
But
don't know. I don't know if it is.
it was
I don't know.
very elementary, like level of this is what's going to happen versus like, here's what your body's doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And
just,
them removing the boys from it too, that's like a whole other thing where I'm like, guys, y'all are gonna grow up and be around women or,
right.
if you decide to get married, you're gonna be around a woman if that's who you decide to marry and
And possibly
you're
kids that then
yeah,
get a period,
yeah, you're gonna, I mean, my husband is a great example of this. He was raised by his father. His parents divorced when he was really young, raised by his father, who was a gunnery sergeant in the Marines, and he has two brothers. So he literally just grew up in a house full of men. And
Right.
now the poor thing has only daughters, because I have my stepdaughter, and our dogs are all girls too. So it's like he's in a house full, just a bunch of estrogen. And he was raised by only boys. And I'm amazed that he is so, like, I don't even know the right adjective for him. He will willingly go to the store and get me whatever tampons I need. Whatever
That's
I
great.
ask. He does not fight it. He does not, like, when I have endometriosis issues, he does not have any, like, disgust or he's like, I don't want to hear about this. He is
Hmm.
just so warm and helpful. And it's kind of shocking since he was raised by
Yeah.
only men. I'm very shocked by it.
Yeah. Kudos to him,
Kudos to
and
him.
for,
Kudos to you, Zach.
yes, good job, Zach, and all the other guys, partners, etc. out there that are supportive. I would say the same about Michael. He has been great over the last year or so. It's been quite the health journey for me. I dealt with all the colon issues last year, which really started me thinking about my hormones and cycling and all of these things. And so it brought it to light. And he has been great about like, just do what you think is best for your body. How can I help you? He knows exactly where the heating pad is at all times because that is like my go to item around here. But let's come back to the cycle syncing. And okay, so learning about the phases. Do you want to talk through the phases
Yeah.
and just share just kind of a quick little snippet? Because I am really brand new at this and trying to understand which phase is what still.
Yeah, yep. So, first of all, I am not a clinician. This is strictly through the lens of productivity and time management. And again, it's rooted in research and studies that have been done, but just always like to give that disclaimer that I am not a health professional. So, if you are having issues with your cycle, or if you are thinking about coming off of birth control, or you think you may have issues with your cycle like endometriosis or PCOS, definitely seek out professional help, whether that be through an MD or a functional nutritionist, functional medicine practitioner, whatever it may be. But from the lens of productivity and time management, that's where I am an expert in coming in with my clients and figuring out some small tweaks that we can make. And so I think there's really two parts of this that I think we should talk about. One is the actual tactical execution of what should you be doing in each phase. But then I also think we need to talk about the realistic side of implementing that, right?
That's
Because the
great.
entire world is not built around a woman's cycle.
Right.
It's actually built around a man's 24-hour cycle,
Mm.
which is very different. So how can you respect your cycle but still live within the normal confines of our existence, right? So those are the two lenses that I think we should
I
take.
love it. I love all that clarification. And for sure, just to make sure it's very clear, I have been working with a doctor this entire time. I have just reached out to friends like you, Laura, that I know this and have asked for the nitty-gritty details of like what should I expect during this. So that was the I agree with like go to your doctor, ask your
Yeah.
doctor all these questions.
Yeah, definitely. So your cycle, your monthly cycle is broken up into 4 phases. Traditionally, that cycle is about 28 to 32, maybe 35 days on the long end. But we'll go through each of those 4 phases. So the first phase is your menstrual phase. And that is, it starts day 1 of your cycle is day 1 of bleeding, of your period. And this usually lasts about 3 to 7 days, depending on your cycle. And it also overlaps a little bit with the next phase, which is called the follicular phase. But within your menstrual phase, from a productivity and time management standpoint, the most productive thing that you can do is rest in your menstrual phase. And I know that's not realistic for everyone, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But I would also say that this is a really good time for reflection. So if you want to look back at, if you're an entrepreneur, look back at how your last launch went. Look back at how your last quarter went. Just really that reflective type of energy of what did I learn? What can I tweak in the future? Just, some of that like solo work, like don't try to be a social butterfly, don't take a ton of meetings, and just really tune into your intuition as much as you possibly can as well. But rest should be your number one priority during your menstrual phase.
Cool. I like that you're tying this together in terms of like, this is what the phase is. This is what's good during that phase from a time management productivity standpoint. And then we'll talk about the realistic part of this. I know, but that is super, super helpful. And so I am someone who always says, like, set these 90-day goals and always reflect on what worked and what didn't and how you can do better. And so that is a perfect way in which I can start incorporating that of doing that reflection at a specific time. Maybe it's not the day I end a launch and doing that reflection because it might not be the best. It's also really interesting because if I could rewind the tapes and like look at past Amanda that probably made decisions, it was probably like when I made like a decision. And in this series, I've learned a lot about myself in different places. And the human design expert said, Amanda, you have the connectivity to like feel in your gut and make a decision. And I
Yes.
really struggle with that, but I wonder if it's even stronger then, like during that menstrual phase of like, I
Yeah.
wonder if that gut feeling is even stronger.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I can already hear people saying, I don't have time to rest or I'm not good at resting. And here's the analogy that I always like to use. Have you ever had an iPhone where you've had it for a couple of years, and you find that you have to keep it on the charger longer or that the battery runs out sooner, the same thing happens if you try to be as productive in your menstrual phase as you are in your ovulatory phase,
Mm.
because you have to rest. So by you not resting when your body needs it the most, you're actually making it to where you can't recharge your internal batteries as effectively. So then your productivity is just going to suffer in all of your other phases.
That's a great analogy. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
For someone who needs it.
Just a reminder for all of us Enneagram threes out there,
Right.
for the Enneagram lovers out there. So the
Yes.
next phase is your follicular phase. And again, this does have a couple of days overlap with your menstrual phase. And it lasts about 10 to 12 days. And the follicular phase is probably my favorite.
Mm.
This is when you can do things like planning out your goals. So this is where you start to look forward, right? So you can plan out your goals, you can plan them out in a lot of detail. So if you have any tasks or projects that are super detail oriented, the follicular phase is the time to do them because your brain is just working in a very detailed manner. It's willing to do that type of work for you. You can also do a lot of creative work. So if you have graphics that you need to design, if you have, if you're a songwriter, this is a great time to work on songwriting, just any type of creative outlet that you might have. The follicular phase is perfect for that. And as an entrepreneur, this is also a great time for brainstorming. So if you are like coming up at, the end of a quarter and you're like, I need to really figure out what I want to do for next quarter, maybe your business is going through a transformation, try to plan a brainstorming session around your follicular phase and around the beginning of your follicular phase.
Fantastic. I love this. For
Yeah.
all clients working with me, get ready, friends, because we're going to start talking about this. If you're open to it, we're going to start planning around this because that's a great idea. That's like, I think about, people often ask me about content planning or, launch planning. Do it when you have that creative juices and when you're probably feeling a little better
Yeah.
too.
Yep, exactly. The next phase, the third phase, is the ovulatory phase. And this is when you ovulate. So your egg is released and you are looking to get pregnant. So because of this, your lizard brain and your primal body makes you the most desirable toward men. Like you need to call in a mate so that you can get pregnant because the ovulatory phase only lasts 1 to 3 days. So you have to find a mate, like I'm talking primal side of
Right.
things, right? You have to find a mate as quickly as possible. So your energy levels are up, you are the most outgoing, your skin is glowing, it's clear because you want to be attractive toward this mate. You have the best sides of your personality coming out, you're really positive. You are just, I call it my Vanna White phase because you are just ready to be on stage, like, showcasing why you deserve to be this amazing mate to whatever suitors are out there for you. But because of that primal brain, and because that's the way that your body functions in your business, this is the perfect time to have speaking engagements. If you are planning any kind of like workshop or live webinar or retreat or anything like that, try to do it around your ovulatory phase. If you are in the corporate world, this is a prime time to plan asking for a promotion. Obviously, you need to have like your business case. Like, don't just go in and be like, I'm ovulating, give me a promotion.
Right.
But you need to have the business case. But if you can plan when you ask for it, this is when your confidence is the highest. If you have to do any type of negotiations with vendors or with coworkers or anything like that, this is the time to do it. Networking events. As much as you can line them up with your ovulatory phase, do it. And then I would also say, this is again not business related, but this is also a really good time to sell something that you want to your spouse. So, for example,
That's interesting.
if I ever want to like go on a big trip or if I want to do like a house renovation, I will try to plan that conversation with Zach. Zach, if you're listening to this, don't just stop.
Now he knows.
Ignore it. I'm giving away my secret. I try to plan that conversation around my ovulation because
That's
I know that I speak clearer, I have clearer thoughts, I can think faster on my feet, and I'm just more in that like super engaging, charismatic part of my cycle. And he's much more likely to say yes.
that's fantastic. You know, you're just being smart. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean he always says yes.
No,
It doesn't mean the conversation always goes perfectly. It
no.
just means you're being smart with your
Yeah. We're
planning.
strategically planning our conversation.
Yeah. I'm sure they do it too.
I'm sure. I'm sure he's like, let me wait until 10:30 at night when she's almost asleep
Right.
to ask if we can go to this car show.
Or he could be in tune to your cycle and doesn't ask for certain things at certain times
Yeah.
of the month, right?
Oh,
So
yes.
it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the last phase that you have is your luteal phase. And full disclosure, this is my least favorite because there are two parts to your luteal phase. There's the beginning and there's the second half. The beginning of your luteal phase, you're still on the high of your ovulation a little bit. The second half of your luteal phase is where you get PMS. If you have PMDD, that's when that starts to come in because you're getting ready to go to your menstrual side of your cycle. And the luteal phase lasts about 10 to 12 days. And some of the activities for this, I like to consider the luteal phase almost like the end of fall, beginning of winter. Like where you just want to stay inside, you want to be cuddled up with like blankets and you want to watch a really good movie and you don't want people to talk to you, you don't want to be social, you just want to become one with the couch. And that's really like the best analogy for your luteal phase. This is a great time. It's not to say that you're not productive. It's different than the menstrual phase because there are some high impact productivity activities that you can do, such as your administrative work. So if you need to do your monthly tax stuff for your business, luteal phase is a perfect time to do this. This is a great time to go into like the details of numbers like data entry, or if you need to look at expense reports, or if you just have a lot of administrative stuff you have to do. This is also a really good time to do organization. So if you need to clean out your clothes, reorganize your closet, you may actually start to pay attention now. And if you get that sudden urge to like redecorate your room,
Yes.
you might be in your luteal phase. You might be in your luteal phase.
I love
But I
that
will
so much.
say to ease up on like work meetings, don't try to be a social butterfly during your luteal phase. It'll be much more exhausting than normal. Like I personally still need like my recharge time alone, regardless of what phase of my cycle I'm in. But if I'm in my luteal phase, that recharge time needs to increase by about 50%. So I know that if I have like work events or work meetings that I can't get out of, I can't, build my cycle around that. I need to build in extra recharge time on the back end, knowing that that is kind of a non negotiable activity that I have to do.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure there's like slight differences for each and every person, which is why you want to start tracking. And and I'm kind of jumping a little bit on this one. So correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just little baby learning over here. Of I'm tracking I'm tracking every single day things in my cycle. I'm using an app. This is not sponsored, but I'm using Natural Cycles and it syncs with my Aura Ring. Also, not an ad, but if either company would like to be a sponsor of the podcast, please reach out. I'd love to have you. And these two things are connect, and so it's really helpful. So my Aura Ring takes my temperature every day. It then goes into Natural Cycles and I'm tracking everything and I'm really enjoying that. However, there is a place where I can track like I'm tired, I'm excited, I'm happy, I'm whatever. So that's really nice. But I think what I really could do in addition to that is think about what activities I could do in my business, like taking that a little step further of like, oh, this was really helpful when I did this at this time. Because I think if I can do that, that would be even better. And everyone's going to be a little bit different. So I'll notice what works for me.
Yeah, exactly. And really, to your point, it really is different for everyone. So
Hmm.
you could have the exact same number of days in your cycle as somebody else, but you may experience your hormone fluctuations at different times
Mm.
within that same period of time. So it truly is different for everyone. And that's why tracking is the best tool that you can give yourself. And just track, don't guess. Because if
Mm.
you start guessing, then you might be guessing wrong. But, for some tactical tips on how to truly integrate this with your life, the way that I look at it is I try to do it as much as I can, knowing that I can't do it all the time.
Sure.
So, with the things that I have control over, like for example, if I know that I need to clean out my closet and organize it, I have control over that. So I will plan that for my luteal phase. I will go in because I also use an app. I will go into my app and I will look at when is the next time that I'm in my luteal phase. That's when I'm going to earmark time on my calendar to go through my closet. Now, it's very different if you're in corporate America. So if you are someone who has a full-time job, you do not have necessarily that luxury day to day of saying, well, I just won't do something if I don't want to.
Right.
Right.
I'm thinking back to my corporate days
Yeah.
and trying to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to come to that meeting today. I'm not in the right phase of my cycle.
Yeah.
I would have been fired.
Yeah, exactly. But what I do is the meetings that I do have control over that are not the absolute on fire emergency, I will move them out. So, unless it is a meeting with my executive, I will reschedule that meeting if it is during my menstrual phase, especially. Now, sometimes in my luteal phase, I will also try to clear my calendar. Another thing that I will do is I will look at the projects that I have going on at the time and I will try my hardest to plan far enough in advance. That's the key here.
Mm.
Plan far enough in advance that I can get my project work done while respecting my cycle. So I don't necessarily try to do this like big, because I'm in marketing just like you were. So I don't try to like plan out this amazing marketing campaign during the wrong phase, right? I try to save that for my follicular phase because I know that that's when I'm really good at planning. If there's a creative component to a campaign or something that I'm working on, I try to save that, right? For the right phase that I need to be in. And it's just those, when you do it more than you don't do it, it makes up for the times that you can't do it. So, like, for example, I have this big trip coming up to Las Vegas that is a work trip. I will be working for 6 days in Vegas. I can't remember what part of my phase I'm going to be in at that time, but I don't have a choice. That is outside of my control. So what I can do though is try to control the things on the front end and the back end. So if it's in the wrong part of my phase, like if it is in my luteal phase, on the back end of that trip, I'm going to give myself an extra day or two, clearing my calendar, sleeping in, not trying to clean, not trying to do any of that other stuff, just resting and recovering because I know that it will be out of alignment with my cycle. And I think knowing when that's happening is just as important as planning alignment in your cycle.
That's fantastic because I'm with you. I can just imagine if we were in a room, which would be such a cool thing to talk about, is be in a room of women and talk about that and hear the questions, and we'll just put a pin in that idea.
Yeah.
But the I can hear people saying, but I can't do that. That's not going to work. And I know that that's what comes up so much. And I could say the same thing. I don't work in corporate anymore, so I have more control, but I want to do amazing things in my business. So I push myself every freaking day. And I'm trying to learn to not like I need in order for I guess the flip that I'm trying to have in my brain, the more I learn from you, the more I'm learning about this is like in order to be the most productive that I can, actually have to rest certain times, like
Yeah.
charging the phone, which
Yeah.
is just not the way my brain works. Like that we had a brain mapping person on in this series as well, and my brain is like go 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 all the time. And so, like, I have to be really aware of that. And so, I think this is just going to be an added layer of me understanding, like, okay, it's okay to like just be one with the couch. Like that's a very uncomfortable thing for me to do, to just sit if other people are moving around.
Yep.
And so that I'm learning that I need to do that certain
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. And just a couple more examples for entrepreneurs specifically, because I know that we're really in that space, and that's really the whole purpose of your podcast. But I know you have a lot of speaking engagements coming up, and that's something for me that has always been one of the biggest tugs against my cycle
Mm,
of having a speaking opportunity, but it's in my menstrual phase or
right.
it's in my luteal phase. And here's what I have found to be really effective, because you don't want to say no to an opportunity
Right.
just because of what phase you're in. So, what I have found is that if it is not in my ovulatory phase, then that's where that front end planning comes in. So, I know I need to hype myself up even more. So, maybe if I have a speaking engagement in my luteal phase, I might pay to have a professional makeup artist come do my makeup. Because in my ovulatory phase, I am going to feel really good with the way that I do my makeup. But in my luteal phase, I might not feel as good about myself. So it might be worth that investment to have somebody else come in and make me feel really good. I might spend extra time doing visualizations or extra time doing the like confidence pose or, hyping myself up, because in my ovulatory phase, I don't need that. I can go out on stage, I can hop on a podcast, we're good. I can wing it. But if you know you're going to be in an unideal part of your cycle for whatever activity you're doing, then it's okay to still do that activity, but plan some fail safes around that to give you the best chance possible at being successful despite not being in the right phase.
That is freaking fantastic. I love this so much because again, it's real. And it's like, if you know you're not going to be as confident in the way you look or whatever, like work with a stylist and get an outfit picked out. And I'm thinking, as soon as you said, like, if you know you're going to be doing the speaking engagement and it's going to be at a different time, like, plan the actual talk during the ovulation phase. Like,
Yeah.
make those, like, plan it, get on fire, make the slides, do the things so you feel really good. And then that can be part of the visualization of, like, I remember feeling great about this. I know I don't necessarily feel great about it today, but I did when I made this. So I'm going to tap into that feeling. That's a
Yes.
fantastic idea with the makeup or hair or clothes or whatever.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And just remember that all of this, everything that you just heard, is laid on a foundation of planning ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fly by the seat of your pants with your cycle. You really truly have to get good at planning in advance so that you are able to get things done in a respectful way for your cycle.
I really like that. And I think that's where I'll start to like tie this all together. And with this entire series, what I've done, and I'm going to record an update based on, and it'll be in this episode. So the person listening to this episode doesn't have to wait. But like right now when we're recording, I will be tracking for the next 30-ish days and then I'll do an update. And so for me, that's what I think I'm going to hone in on. And that would be the next step for someone, is to really just start tracking in whatever way works for you. I recognize, and I think it's important for me to say, I know some people do not want to put their information in an app, and that is fine. If you do not want to do that, you can do it. I have a friend that does it in a spreadsheet. It is remarkable. This
Yeah.
spreadsheet is unreal. Shout out to her. She knows exactly who she is. It is amazing. And so, but that's what works for her.
Yeah.
And what works for me is different from everyone else. So use whatever system, but it's that planning ahead is the thing. It's like once you can start to see the rhythm, it's starting to plan ahead. And I love that so very much. So, Laura, before I kind of wrap all this up, do you have anything else that you would like to share? And please tell everyone where they can find out more about you. Because I know there's going to be several ladies out there who are working corporate jobs and doing this entrepreneur thing and are like, I need to work with Laura.
Yeah, yeah, and I would love to meet them. So the best first step that you can take working with me is my free 5-day challenge. It's called Master Your Work Week Challenge, and it's quick, less than 15 minutes a day, but it really allows you to master your to-do list, master your work week, and drop that feeling of always being a hot mess, of always being out of control. And you can do that at thelauraddavis.com/work week. Highly encourage you to do that. Outside of that, just connect with me on Instagram. Reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. You can find me at its.laura.davis. And I'm always in my DMs. So I love talking to other women who are also in corporate America and, running businesses and being CEOs.
And I cannot recommend you enough. You are
Thank you.
wonderful. My life is better, my business is better because we've connected. So I'm so thankful to have you in my corner and to know you and call you a friend. So thank you so much for today. And for everyone listening, take that next step of starting to track your cycle. If that's what you want to do, learn about how you can be the most productive that you want to be, which includes resting. So take that next step and go for that. And until next time, give yourself permission to track your cycle and use it to your advantage and grace along the way. I'll talk to you soon.